Welcome to the LBM Journal Sales Podcast, hosted by Rick Davis, the premier sales trainer and consultant in the construction supply industry. In each episode, Rick and guests explore what it takes to genuinely succeed, not just in sales and business, but in life.
I am here today with Mr. Greg Templeton, CEO and president. Are you both of SunPro, or are you the CEO?
I'm the president of SunPro Corporation. Yeah, we have a CEO over the Clyde companies. That's Wilfred Clyde, and then each of the entities is a president. So I'm the president of SunPro.
This man is so good that he's the president of SunPro, but he also became the CEO of the year in Utah. And on behalf of DMSI, our sponsor, the producer of software for accounting, fleet management, and CRM, thanks DMSI, and thank you for being here today, Greg.
Good to be on the show.
So I have to ask you this question. Tell me what a CEO does. I think we always know CEOs, the big person, and they do this thing, and it could be easy to think, oh, they walk around and just kind of make sure the ship's doing its job. What does a CEO do? What's the challenges of being a CEO?
Yeah, I think the range of what a CEO does should be broad. So, for example, most people would think of CEOs as setting strategic direction for a company, being very involved in the strategic planning process. And that's obviously very important. And it's certainly one of my primary roles with my vice presidents and senior leadership team is to set direction for the company. But, that would be maybe on the top end of the range, and probably, reporting to your board of directors is another one. I have board meetings 3 times annually where I report to my bosses who, to get approval for CapEx and the overall direction of the company. But on the other end, I spent, and this isn't to draw any attention to me, but I spent a full day installing insulation on one of our commercial jobs. So we're in the insulation and garage door business too. And I think it's helpful for all employees to see that, listen, yes, I happen to be the president of SunPro, but it doesn't mean that installing insulation or working on a door line or helping in the lumber yard or on the truss line is beneath me. And so I did that with my my division manager with responsibility for our truss, insulation, garage door business, and it was helpful. So I think the range can be broad. Obviously, I can't install insulation with any degree of frequency, but I think it's helpful to kind of get out in the field. The one other thing that I would suggest as part of the CEO job is it's easy to kind of get stuck in your office and in meetings where you are setting direction for the company, which is critically important. But it's also, I would say, equally as important to get out in front of your people. And so we use safety as the venue or the vehicle for this. But we have safety lunches at all 15 of our locations on a biannual basis. So it gets me and my senior leadership group in front of our location managers and all the employees at those locations at least twice a year. It's hard because we're growing. We're all over Idaho now and cover Utah, but those get scheduled on my calendar 6 months in advance, and I make every effort to be at all of them. I don't make it to all of them, but my 2 VPs make it to the ones that are part of their responsibility.
Sure. I love that. One of my favorite archetypes is always, everybody loves the warrior. They know what the warrior is. The warrior is the fighter who plays with pain for the side of right, goes in against all odds, gives up for a cause greater than them themselves. But my favorite archetype is the warrior leader. It's Braveheart. It's Gladiator, Russell Crowe. Yeah. And that's what I love what you just said. Sometimes we as leaders you as leaders, I'm not calling myself one, I hope people think that, but a leader has to go in and do the job with their people. They have to prove they're ready to go to battle with them. And that, if nothing else, it just makes that statement, not to mention the learning you get from the experience, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I the crew, the insulation crew that I work with that day, I know them really well. So when we have safety lunches, I show up, and I think I have another level of credibility with them because I showed up and work. Sometimes they forget. So I'll remind them. They complain about certain parts of their job. I said, I understand. Do you understand? I said, yeah, I remember I was on that project. And my VP was there multiple days. I was just there one day. Yeah.
Don't you remember? I was the guy that broke his thumbnail off on the hammer that day. I get it.
What really jogs their memory, because remember I paid for lunch that day? We all went out for lunch and it was on me.
Yeah, right. I ought to remember that. You said something I really liked. I know you pride yourself on culture. Doesn't everybody? They all say we've got a great culture. But there's a difference between doing that in word and deed. And you've heard the Drucker quote, culture eats strategy for lunch.
Yep.
It sounds to me, I want to give you two questions in one. It sounds to me like you said something, and I want people to hear it. You didn't say you just go have safety meetings for the purpose of safety. There's a cultural element of engagement you're seeking in every encounter about things like that. Did I hear that correctly? And then go on and tell a little bit more about what you consciously do to build better culture and people connection.
Yeah, great question, Rick. So yeah, safety is the vehicle for us to be there. So that's the premise. When we show up and say, this is a safety lunch, here's the program, I remind them, and we do focus on safety. But two other components of that meeting are, first is I give them a financial report on how the company's doing. And it's amazing that, you know, your trust line workers or door shop, whoever you're talking to that day, when you start talking about financials, and I try and make it broad and very easy to understand, but it gives them buy-in to the organization. And you know, a lot of times if our margins improved or if revenue's up, I'll say, well, our margin's up, not just because, you know, of macroeconomic forces, but you guys are more efficient. And I can usually pinpoint, because they'll talk to the manager in advance, here's some of the things that you identified in our effort to be more Six Sigma focused, or, you know, 4S. And so it's the buy-in and then the ownership that kind of engenders is amazing when you just talk about the financial performance of Sunpro. And obviously we've been doing an outstanding job the last few years. And so it's a fun conversation. When the market turns, it might not be quite as fun. But right now it's very engaging and it's trending the right way. The second part is I open it up for questions, which, Rick, it's when we first started doing this, we've been doing this for probably 4 years now. That's always a little risky, right? To open it up for questions, and especially when there's frustration with the size of the location or you know, issues in delivering for our customers or following through on our promises. But what's nice is the questions are usually pretty kind. Some of them are tough, but we're very open forum in our organization. So there's no, you know, no question off limits, provided it's, you know, phrased carefully and kindly. And so, and what's nice is a lot of times, you know, if there's this pause when I open up for questions, I'll talk about the direction of the company. Saying, listen, we recently acquired this, you know, door shop in Vineyard, Utah. And by the way, we acquired it because we weren't seeking after it, because the owner of that business is looking to retire. And he's saying, if I'm going to sell my business to any organization, I want to sell it to Sunpro. They're a family-focused, privately held company. By the way, I've got 2 offers from PE firms right now, both of which are higher than what I'll probably get from Sunpro, and they're transparent about that in the process. And so it's flattering to me as the president of Sunpro, but I say this to the entire organization when we have these safety lunches. People are coming to us and asking us to acquire their companies because they value their employees. They put them in a position where they can retire, and they want those employees to continue to be taken care of. And they look at Sunpro as an organization that will do that. And you know, from a culture perspective, I think I kind of conveyed that culture. But culturally, if you're not a fit at Sunpro, you find out pretty quickly. Managers make that designation pretty quickly, and then we invite you to leave, or if you're not willing to kind of comply or conform to the culture of Sunpro. And so we're really, just like you said, Peter Drucker's comment, culture eats strategy for breakfast. No matter how awesome we are or my team is at strategic planning, if our culture's crappy, it doesn't matter. And so we're very sensitive to culture killers. Potentially an organization, and when we go through the hiring and onboarding process, through the hiring process, because onboarding have already obviously been extended off, or we're very deliberate in making sure that this in the interview process, this person will align with their culture. We have conversations about that in the interview.
When you say culture killer, you mean a candidate?
Like if somebody, a candidate we suspect might potentially hurt our culture, or maybe somebody peaked in the interview and they show up and they're not quite the person we expected they were. We quickly address that at Sunpro, and then invite them to leave the organization or conform to the culture that we have here.
Yeah, gotcha. Do you guys do measurements of employee satisfaction or anything like that? Talk about that.
It's a great question. So we do an annual survey. We just finished. In fact, I just got the results from our director of our VP of HR, and I'll be sending a message out as the president of the company at the beginning of next week saying, thank you for participating in the survey. Sunpro actually had 94% participation rate this year, which is the highest we've ever had. So we place a lot of emphasis on participating in the survey. It's completely anonymous, so please be candid, and there's nobody's going to know it was your comments. And then we study the results of that survey and deliver or identify actionable or action items from that survey and review it at least on a quarterly basis in management team settings and sales meetings, team settings, and all different types of settings. And so one of the questions is in that survey is, and I'm going to paraphrase here, is did your manager talk to you about the survey results, and was there any action taken as a result of the survey results? And that's obviously a direct reflection on that manager. And so we have a score specifically for that question alone. And so we're really serious about gleaning feedback from our people and taking action based on what they've said.
Awesome. What were the survey results? How happy are your people, just out of curiosity?
Good. Yeah, good. So we have one score, which is an overall satisfaction score, which is an aggregate of all of the answers. We're about a 76% right now, which is 1 point below what we were last year. So we're trending the wrong direction, right? Which is it's concerning. It's not a massive move, but when you look at all of the industry benchmarks, Sunpro is overachieving, let's say, from the perspective of our employee base. And so there's a variety of questions I can pull up, Rick, but we really take it seriously. I mean, it's expensive. We use Qualtrics software to administer the survey, and I guess we've been doing this for 6 years, and I've got all that data, and we've continued to trend the right way at Sunpro from that overall satisfaction as employee at Sunpro.
You said something I find very interesting, that it's above industry standards. That's of the people that actually even measure it.
Yeah.
I would love to encourage more people in our industry to do it. I've been privileged to meet with hundreds of our industry members, and it's astounding how many say, "Oh, we just have a great culture. People just love working here." I'm like, wonderful. How do you measure that?
Yeah.
We just know they just say great things. I'm sure they do.
Quite the measurement, isn't it? Yeah.
How do you like working for me? Oh, you're great.
Well, and I don't want to get too carried away, because if you look at the NAICS or SIC codes, because that's how they base it off of industry, there's no designation, at least in the data that we use with Qualtrics, for the lumber and building materials business. So it's like industries, and so we're like, our sister companies are involved in construction. And so it's construction and manufacturing. You have to have a mix of the two, but yeah.
I'm embarrassed to admit this. There's no SIC code for building materials.
So I'm sure there is an SIC code for it, but for the when they go ahead and do industry benchmarks, either they're not actually getting the data.
Oh, okay.
Particular industry, so it's not specific to LBM. It's specific to a combination of manufacturing and then the construction space. So it's as close as we can get.
I got you. I didn't want to think we were so unsexy to people that we don't even have an SIC code. Talk a little bit about your path to success, how you started out when you were younger. And I had to say this so people know this. Greg and I had the wonderful pleasure of strolling on the streets of downtown Boston.
I remember that.
Boston, Massachusetts, past the Harvard Yard. Actually, we didn't go there, but we did walk to the ballpark, where we actually enjoyed a game in a suite at Fenway Park, and it was a delightful conversation. And I got a chance to get to know Greg a little bit and his family, a little bit about his family. But so talk about your background, and then I want to talk a little bit about your family. You've got some real successful achievers in your family, a large family. Talk a little bit about your background first, and we'd love to hear about your family. I want to hear about your daughter and her tennis exploits these days.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. I took an unconventional route to the LBM space, which I bet you that's probably indicative of a lot of people in our business. I'm from Toronto, Canada, but I went to university in British Columbia, so UBC, which is one of the premier forestry programs in North America. I didn't study forestry. I studied international relations and Russian. I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Siberia, Russia. So I came back and shifted my major to international relations and Russian, and I had aspirations of working for the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade for the Canadian government. And did well in my classes, had a good GPA, and applied, went through the whole screening and interview process, which is lengthy, got flown into Ottawa for my final interview. And I remember sitting down, I had to take some tests in both Russian, and I could see people beside me that weren't white men and spoke Russian more fluently than I did, that were native. And I thought, if I'm doing this on the basis of Russian, I'm probably not going to make it. Anyway, I got a rejection letter from the Canadian government after going through that whole process, my entire degree. My aspirations were to work for the Canadian government. So that was tough. And I think that's part of, as the president of Sunpro now, there's a lot of failures that are behind, I would say most, if not all, successful people. And I wouldn't say I'm successful, I'm just saying people look at me in my role and say, oh, I'd love to be the president of Sunpro someday. But there's a ton of failures that are behind me. And that was one of the big career ones for me. But
wait, I'm going to interrupt you and qualify two things. Number one, you are successful. And number two, in spite of the fact that somehow they did ship you off to Siberia, which is usually the penalty. What did you do wrong in church?
I know it's interesting, Rick. Like when you get your mission call, it's a piece of paper back in the day. Now it's just an email. But
you open that envelope and you hope it says Oahu, and then you got Siberia.
Well, in my situation, because I was raised in Canada, I studied French for 8 years. My sister served her mission in Paris, France, and so I just thought I'd probably go on somewhere French speaking, and then I get a call to play. It's a place called Novosibirsk, Russia, this is back before we had Google Earth, and so I pull out a map, try to figure out where it was, and realize it was way east of the Ural Mountains. And so, yeah, it was a very interesting, a very rewarding experience, that's for sure. That coming from Canada, I figured I was pretty hardy, but Siberia is a different level of cold, that's for sure.
I'm guessing you had to take a train there?
No, I flew.
You flew the whole way, okay.
Yeah, I flew all the way there. And then, but when I was in country, all I ever did was ride public transportation. When you go from city to city, it's all trains. So I took the Siberian Railway many, many times. And it's really cool, actually. Many of you have probably seen the show Dr. Zhivago and the beautiful landscapes. That's very much, once you get on a train and exit the big cities, that's what it really looks like. It's beautiful. In the cities, it's very Soviet. I mean, it's like tilt up, poorly constructed buildings, but outside the city, it's beautiful.
You inspire me to want to watch Dr. Zhivago again with the great Omar Sharif. And I think that was Julie Christie or somebody like his Lara. It's been a long time.
Well, you've already covered Braveheart and like Gladiator. I think I put Dr. Zhivago in the mix too.
I'm a movie guy. What can I say? Especially, I love those epic stories, right? So I love that you talk about your failures. What are some of the biggest lessons you learned with the mistakes you've made? Tell me.
So one of the biggest lessons that I think has led me to where I am right now is I recognize that my undergraduate degree, was very focused, and I wasn't going to get the job. Could I continue to push and probably go to another job somewhere? Yeah, I could have, but I chose to pivot at that point, focus more on business. I did my MBA with an emphasis in finance, and I recognized that the world values hard skills. I already knew this, but the world really values hard skills. And so I needed a hard skill, whether it's a CPA or some kind of acronym behind your name. And so I did my MBA with an emphasis in finance, and like most people wanted to get into management consulting, investment banking, but I chose to work for a company that I interned for called Spacecraft, which was owned by Weyerhaeuser, formerly by Macmillan Goldell, the big Canadian company, and then Weyerhaeuser, and Weyerhaeuser sold international paper. So that's where my career started. And that was in the container board side of the business, but Weyerhaeuser, as you know, is a big forest products company. So I worked there for a number of years in the different management roles, and they relocated me I was in New York for 8 years, back out to Utah. And when I was out here, you'll like this story, Rick. I met a guy at a rec soccer game, and his name happened to be Jeremy Hafen. Never met the guy in my life. We're sitting there. It's a Saturday, so you're tired from the week of work, and I'd probably been traveling most of the week. And he strikes up a conversation. We start talking about things, and he hears that I work for Spacecraft, which was formerly a Weyerhaeuser-owned business, and that piques his interest because Weyerhaeuser was a supplier to Sunpro. At the time, it was Sunrock Building Materials. 2 or 3 games later, he reaches out to me on LinkedIn and says, "Let's have lunch." And I kind of thought he just wanted to be my friend. And we sit down, and this turns into this. And we went to a Chick-fil-A. The restaurant we wanted to go to was close. We had a lunch at Chick-fil-A, and he asked me a ton of professional questions about my background and stuff. And eventually said, "I'd love for you to come work for Sunrock Building Materials. Would you want to?" And I said, "I'm happy where I am right now. But I said, I'm always open to other opportunities." And so I went and toured the truss operation in Linden and our Salt Lake, custom millwork operation in our lumber yards. And eventually, I was interviewing with the president CEO of Clyde Companies, Wilford Clyde. And it was a great interview situation because here I am, gainfully employed, not really looking to make a move, but interviewing for an opportunity to become the vice president of Sunrock Building Materials. And I was really I hadn't interviewed for 15 years because you're out of school, and I've been with Spacecraft ever since I graduated. So I was on the edge of my seat, I got stuff to tell. I got a story finally where it's not so education. Rich was actually a blend of education and profession. And so I got probably 3 or 4 pretty good quality interview questions, but I realized that Jeremy could have already qualified me as, I like this guy. It was a culture interview. It was like, hey, are you the right fit in the organization? Because we work for 2 publicly traded companies, Weyerhaeuser and IP, International Paper. Are you going to get frustrated with the pace of a privately, family held, privately held company? And I anyway walked away from the interview. I had no idea, and I'm a pretty good gauge after an interview, where I was, but I really didn't have any idea. And got the offer extended. Worked as a VP under Jeremy for about 2 years, and then Jeremy moved on to become the president of Sunrock, and now he's the president of all the Clyde companies. And I became the president of Sunrock Building Materials, which is now Sunpro. So that's my path.
I love it. DMSI provides a complete line of business software and mobile apps for LBM dealers. Their Agility ERP system manages every stage of order fulfillment, from online sales and accounting to inventory control and delivery. DMSI's Building Results CRM is designed specifically for the construction products industry. It helps sales teams grow their pipelines and achieve predictable future results. DMSI is an independent, family-owned company known for strong customer partnerships and unparalleled service. Visit dmsi.com to learn more. The first time I met your company, I met Jeremy Haffen, and I really want to say this so people can hear this. There's meritocracies and there's nepotism, and Jeremy happens to be a family member, but I'll tell you something. The moment I met him, I knew right away this guy had the goods, and culture starts right at the top. There's a perfect example of it. He goes out, he proactively finds somebody who can make the culture. You mentioned something. The first time I met with him, he did something after our first meeting. I flew out, he walked me around, and he was interviewing me to do some work for the company. Maybe they had already engaged me by that point. I don't really remember. All I know is he also had already printed out an entire list of financials for the company, and he shared that with me.
Yeah.
No non-disclosure, no, to make sure you don't share this with anybody. He just showed me the respect of knowing that obviously I know the proper discretion with information like that. I've never had a client that would do that. And usually, or more often, when I ask a client for that type of information, they're a little bit reticent. And, well, you're going to sign an NDA and all this other stuff. And that speaks to the trust that's so important. And one of the things that we talked about, and we have to talk about this, he talked to me right away. He had a model of pricing that he was going to institute. The financials weren't good, by the way, everybody. And it was mostly because he felt they were just pricing goods incorrectly. And this has become a matter of public knowledge in our industry. I just finished my book, Beat the Price Objection, and I didn't overtly refer to you guys, but I did talk about pricing as a meritocracy. And I would love for you to share at this point, Greg, what your guys' pricing strategy is, and just people need to know this.
Yeah, I appreciate it. One quick comment. I mean, I don't blame Jeremy for having to not sign an NDA. Our financials weren't so great back then. Those are the dark days of LBM. He was trying,
all the more reason that he wouldn't want them shared, probably.
I'll show you anything. We're not doing very well right now. And so anyway, and Jeremy did a great job.
Wait, maybe that was a negotiation tactic to make sure I get my price because to make sure they can afford, who knows, right?
Yeah. He did a great job leading the company through those difficult times, that Great Recession. Anyway, so yeah, Sunpro is very much defined. And we're in a commodity business, right? And so you have to differentiate yourself. And so we have 3 core differentiators. There's others that are there, but one is the Sunpro Rewards program. The second is our blended pricing model for strategic customers, which is effectively, a hedge or it smooths the volatility of the lumber market. I'll get into that later on or in another podcast. But the third is our very objective pricing strategy. And it's based off of, when I say objective pricing, it is truly objective pricing. So what we do is we live in BizTrack. We have a model set up in BizTrack where we do it across 4 categories, but it can be across as many as you want, and it can be certainly varied, but we do it based off of volume, So a customer's price is going to be based off of these four categories: their volume with us, their cost of service, which can be a little bit subjective, but we try and make it as objective as possible. The cost of credit, which is credit score, and are you paying on time? What's your historical payment history with us? And then your mix of products. Do you buy just lumber? Do you buy across all four product categories, right? And you can have an HLM. So if they're high volume, it's an H. If it's medium volume, it's an M. If it's L, if it's low, it's an L, right? So and then you can have all of those HLM across multiple across all four of those product categories, or those categories, let's just say. And then we adjust for whether they pay with a credit card too at the very end, right? That's part of the mix. So what we do is the managers will sit down with their sales rep when a new customer comes on, and we will assign that customer a pricing profile. And it can be, volume can be based off of, is this a big multifamily, builder? Is it a big single family builder? So the potential volume is huge. And so we'll assign them an H and say, we think the volume will be, and the volume if they reach that volume, which we hope they do, in most cases they do, then it stays. If they don't, then on at least an annual basis, we usually try and do it more frequently, we'll evaluate that pricing profile, the sales rep and his or her manager, and they'll make adjustments. Is this person paying on time? We'll pull up BizTrack, we'll pull up their payment history over the last 30, 60, 90 a year. And if they're not paying us on time and they have a low a cost of credit, it needs to be pushed to an M for a medium or a high, right? And so we make those adjustments, and so the best pricing profile would be HLLM, high volume, low cost of credit, low cost of service, and then multiple products, right? We're buying across more than two product categories. And so that's the best pricing profile. So what's nice is when a sales rep is, let's say he grew up in high school and his buddy's a general contractor, now he wants to give him a great price. You can't do that. It's based, your price is driven by this algorithm, which supports all of the, these four areas for pricing. It's based off of that, and you can't do anything better than an HLLM. Now we do have we call it strategic pricing, where we move off of that, but I look at those ones. Those are off the kind of pricing matrix, and so
that would be more something like, look, they're not in this category right now, but we're evaluated based upon potential or something like that. Perhaps.
Yeah, so potential. They're such a big customer that we need to get a little bit more aggressive in pricing. We'll give them a different pricing profile, but there's a handful of those customers, and I manage them specifically, and I quickly try and usher them back into our pricing matrix. But
sure.
What's key about this, Rick, and I think this is what we talked about, is obviously we're in business. We want to maximize profitability, right? So you want to make sure your margins are reflective of the business that you're doing. We want to limit pricing negotiation. In some ways, eliminate price negotiation and say, listen, you're on the very best pricing profile, or you're not in the very best pricing profile, and here's where you can improve. You need to start paying better on time, or it's hard to have a conversation. You're a really high maintenance customer, but we got people coming out to your job site all the time, or you want an executive to meet with you almost on a weekly basis. That's a higher maintenance customer. Or you're only buying lumber from us. Why don't you buy millwork and doors and truss and insulation garage doors, and that will improve your pricing profile. So it's maximizing profitability, obviously from the business perspective, limiting negotiations, and then create consistency. I don't want a customer to ever come to me saying, I know I'm building 100 homes on an annual basis, but this guy that's building 10, I just found out he's got the same pricing that I do. That's a conversation I never want to have, and I never will have, because it's objective. The sales rep, yes, has the ability with his or her manager to adjust that profile, but the manager is the only one that can go in and adjust it. The sales rep can't. And so we trust our salespeople, but you have to have controls in place, and that's one of the controls. And what's wonderful is it creates great relationships with customers, because we're saying, listen, we're transparent. You're a great customer. You have the very best pricing profile.
I just wrote a section in my book. Well, my book's about to be printed, and it'll be published later this year. But I talked about negotiation authority, and I always like to ask salespeople, is it better to have the authority to negotiate or not? And they always presume, oh, of course it is. I need that authority. And then I tell a little funny story in there. It's a parable where the protagonist, Abe, is at a restaurant, and he asks the waitress for a better price on the meal when they get the check. And she just looks at him in disbelief. And she says, I can't. And he says, why? And she doesn't know what the answer is. She says, well, I don't have the authority to do that. And I think there's power in that I hope our listeners we'll get to. My book is about getting your telling price. I'm not doing this to promote a book. I'm doing this to help an industry. And here we've got the CEO of a very successful company giving away their trade secret, and everybody should embrace this. We can't control prices. We can't fix prices. That's illegal. We get all that, but at least have the audacity to say, look, we should at least have some sensibility and structure to this that's fair and equitable for our trade partners, our valued customers. So thank you for sharing that, Greg. That's awesome stuff, man.
Yeah, it is. And I just told you the 4 profile criteria. You can do multiple profile criteria, but it works out well. It turns out that we have 87 pricing profiles because you take those 3 different categories and each of the 3 different options or levels in those 4 different areas. And so it's 87 different pricing profiles. So we're varied. And the whole point is you want to mind the gap in your pricing, right? So if you buy something for $10, our low contractor price would be, let's say $11 or $11.76, right? And then our retail price is going to be $16.39. Well, people typically will, here's my low contractor, here's my retail price, but we have so many different iterations in between low contractor and retail.
And by the way, for our listeners, you actually said that the salesman sits down with the manager and all that other stuff. But I think this is right. I think you guys also sit down with your customers and let them know that the pricing that you choose for them are based upon the decisions they make themselves. Is that correct?
Yeah, we tell our customer your price based on your behavior, and here's how we measure your behavior, which dictates what your price is. It's, are you going to buy as much as you can with us within your ability to buy, right, as you grow, and which they can control to a certain extent. Cost of service, are you a higher low maintenance customer? And let me define what that means in our mind, and maybe we can make adjustments in your mind. What's your credit score? What's your cost of service? And then please buy across all platforms for SunPro, and you even better price. And so, we're very transparent and open internally as an organization and externally, the customer facing.
What kind of response do you get from your customers when you share that sort of dialogue?
I think they love it for the most part. It's
sure, why not?
Refreshing. I'm a good customer. I pay on time. I'm big volume. Want to buy across. I want to partner with SunPro, and so I want to buy across all your product categories. So I want to make sure I get the very best price. And you're telling me, Greg, or whoever that individual is talking to, I'm going to get the best price because this is the way your price is structured. And the answer is yes, and we can say that confidently.
Love it. Are you familiar with the book, The Disciplines of Market Leaders by Tracy and Wiersma?
I haven't read it. Maybe.
I don't know. I want to share this because you do something either consciously or instinctively. In this book, these 2 cats argue that there's 3 fundamental business models of success. One they call operational excellence. I don't care for that term. It's more the franchise model. It's a sales model where this is how we do things, take it or leave it. You got to fit into the criteria. One is customer intimacy, where you adapt your model and one is product innovation, where you're constantly out innovating yourself. If anybody's seen a change in LP Louisiana Pacific in recent years, it's because of that, because they actually hired Michael Tracy to come consult with them. But within our industry, the operationally excellent model, it's Southwest Airlines, one seating thing, one type of airplane, one procedure. In McDonald's, fast food, you order by number, Chick-fil-A, as you mentioned. Customer intimacy is where you adapt a model specifically for the person. Maybe it's special terms, special delivery considerations, special products you're going to carry. What I want listeners to hear is you've done that instinctively. You've got some very large accounts and you all recognize we might have to cater slightly differently to them, devote some personnel, have some tailored delivery capabilities, have some special ordering procedures and unique terms or things like that. But for the most part, we need to train salespeople to sell exactly what we got because we can't create a special system for every customer. It's chaos. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, if you put the structure in place, Rick, and sales reps specifically, you reference them, know that they have to operate within this framework or structure, and it's fair to them and fair to the customer. And our sales reps, I'm sure, like most sales reps in any industry, we're talking about LBM, are paid their commission off of gross margin dollars. Mm-hmm. So they're financially incented to make sure the price is as high as it could be. And so you could say, well, maybe they'll assign a pricing profile to a customer that's not quite as reflective of their behavior because they want to get a slightly higher margin, and that's something you have to manage too. But they understand the structure, they understand the philosophy behind it. That's objective. We're not trying to take any power from them in pricing, because they can still sit down with their manager and make adjustments here and there. But it's just, to me, if I was the sales rep and coming into an organization like Sunpro, I love the fact that, hey, you have the ability to price with your manager, as opposed to, hey, listen, you can go this high or this low, and that's it. And it's that philosophy or approach to a $20 million customer and the same to a $2 million customer. It doesn't make any sense, right? When you have that much of a gap between the customer size.
You can see me grinning here. I'm holding back a laugh, because God bless you. Because as a salesman, which is really what I consider myself to be, I just love the fact that you just presume that every salesman is going to try to figure out a way to raise their margins. Because I was thinking just the opposite. They figure, well, a little commission on something is better than no commission on it.
Well, so, Rick, we have reps on either side of that spectrum of philosophy. Right. Reps that price it too low, and we'll try to work with their managing the profile, and reps that probably not price it. You could say price it too high too, but we're more concerned about the reps that are pricing too low and not understanding the full value proposition of Sunpro. We have a lot of value to offer.
That's culture, folks. Here's the CEO that just presumes that every salesperson wants to raise the price, whereas I think a lot of us out there think, no, they're going to cut the price to get this.
I'll do. And you probably already know this, Rick, but it's also very generational. When we do our surveys, the feedback we actually base, because you have to tell them what they let us know. We already have a profile on our employees, but we have all the data from millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, all the segment. And it's interesting, the difference. And we'll put it on a quadrant, kind of evaluate that. So we dissect it multiple different ways. But it's interesting to see the generational inclinations when it comes to sales and pricing.
Do you want to share the generalizations, or do we want to avoid that lest we cast aspersions on a particular generation?
Millennials get picked on too much, and then baby boomers sometimes. So I'll just leave that. You guys can figure that one out.
I totally agree too. I think that when you look at these millennials, some of them are very ambitious and really want to succeed, and they're very well, groomed, and they're very similar to human beings in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. Human beings.
The way people talk about it's like they're not even normal human beings. All these kids today, everything they say about these kids today was me. They don't want to work. They want to play. They want to have games. They want to go out and play sports. They want. That was me. I was a millennial apparently. And plus, I do athletic events. I do bike rides, distance bike rides. I do triathlons. And here's the funniest thing: at the end of every one of these, it doesn't matter if I finish in last place or first, I still get a little medal.
Yeah,
I'm a millennial.
Good for you.
Hey, let's talk about one other thing. I want to get this on record. In our pre-meeting, we were talking a little about, and the journals talk about the great success story. We've turned your trust facility in at Linden, and congratulations. We want to hear about that. But you said something I want to know if it was fair game for me to say, how did it get so messed up in the first place? Because there's a lesson there. And you said you wanted to talk more about that anyway. So talk about Linden for a minute and what people should learn from that.
Yeah. So I'll start from the end first. So we fixed it on the back of an outstanding design manager and outstanding location manager in our trust operation. So we're in a much better position now. But here's how it got there. And this is my best estimate. It was a combination of a poor management. So we made a management change in both design and in the operation. So poor management, which is the big deal. And when we made that change, we lost almost all of our designers. So how do you run a truss operation when you don't have designers? We've now got multiple designers and multiple locations across Sunpro. We even actually outsource. We have a design company, a third-party design company out of Nicaragua that we use. So
wow,
we got more varied with that. But we had one designer at that point. It was our design manager. So we were in a world of hurt. And that was in part because of the management changes that we made, but because we put the right people in the right places, we were able to recruit new designers. Our design manager is an outstanding mentor and trainer. And so we have an unbelievable design group. So the first one is just management. The second thing is we allowed sales reps, and this isn't being dismissive of sales reps at all, but we allowed the sales operations side of our business to dictate our schedule. And when you do that, it's very self-serving. I want to make sure my customer is taken care of first. even though I submitted the plans or I got this in the schedule way late, this is a really important customer to me, therefore it should be the SunPro. And so what happened is our operations, this is because in part because of lack of management, was designing and manufacturing trusses for the customer and salesperson that was screaming the loudest. And so some great customers wouldn't scream very loud, right? And I get a call, and this happened for probably 6 to 8 months. I got calls multiple times throughout the week where I'm getting berated because we gave them a date. They call in, 2 days after that date, and the trusses aren't even designed. And it's a good customer. And so I called the timeout at that point. So we need to get date integrity back into our truss schedule, and that we've done that, and that has been the law for us going forward. When we tell a customer a date of delivery for truss, are we perfect? No, but we're way better. Infinitely better than we were back in the day, where we just would make trusses based off of who was screaming at us the loudest. So,
go ahead.
So I did, just to summarize, it was allowing the sales side of our operation, sales reps coupled with their customers, to dictate the process. And you need a strong manager to step in and say, no, I have ownership for the P&L at this location. I'll tell you when we can provide trusses for that particular customer. This
is the bane of our existence in this industry. And any listener who thinks, how could they allow their salespeople to do that? It happens every day. Salesperson calls up and says, stop the truck. I need you to get, 32 pieces of sill plate on there or something like that, whatever. And they, let's see. Not realizing that what they just did is they delayed 2 other orders for their other customers or another salesperson, but yet we allow it to happen all the time. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it's highly frustrating. And if you convey it the way you just did, Rick, so basically I'd say to the sales rep or whoever's asking, so you're asking me to make this a priority. So which of your customers is going to get hosed on their next trust? You tell me of your customers who's going to feel the pain from this.
Well stated. On time in full is not an operational model, it's a sales model. And it starts with the opening communication, right? Mm-hmm. Amen to that. Hey, one other question. Talk a little bit about your family. You have a large family of overachievers. You care to share a little bit about that and what how your family life plays into your business and where that falls in your priorities and how that helps you as a leader and a human being?
Yeah, I guess I fit the Utah model, even though I'm an East Coaster like you, north of the border, a Canadian East Coaster. So
yeah,
I married a girl from Idaho, southeastern Idaho, just outside of Rexburg, and we have 8 children. It's a lot of kids. I'm the second of 5 East Coast. She's the 9th of 10 kids. When we got married, I thought, 5's the new 10 because we don't all live on farms, potatoes, potato kind. Anyway. Yeah, we have 8 children, 5 straight girls, 3 boys. My oldest daughter played, Division I tennis, loved tennis, took it to a level that we never thought she would. And yeah, my kids are, I wouldn't say overachievers. They're just, in our home, you have to be doing something, right? Whether it's playing the piano or, playing tennis, running, whatever it is, right? So we don't. Obviously, there's a time to relax, but we want to make sure our kids are engaged and involved with things, and so. If that's the definition of overachievers, then yes, I guess our kids are overachievers because they're busy doing things. But I have a wonderful wife and great kids. And what's interesting is with Suzanne, my wife's name is Suzanne. We kid around because I feel like we're spanning, even in Utah where there's historically big families, we're spanning multiple generations where we had our oldest daughter just got married. And so now we are part of the, we're not a grandma and grandpa, but we're part of that potential group, I guess. And then we have, our oldest at home is 16 all the way down to 3 years old, so we're still changing diapers in some cases. So we span these 3 different generations, and it's overwhelming at times. It's fun almost all the time, but I have a great family, and I mean we all go to work. I love what I do. Not every day. I mean, some days are really crappy, sitting down with customers that are really frustrated because of whatever's not happening for them from SunPro. Those are crappy conversations, but I think we all work, I hope in part because we enjoy work, but ultimately it's for the I'm not independently wealthy, so I have to work. But even if I was, I think I'd probably still keep coming to work, so to keep myself busy doing things. But it's for your family, right? You want to provide for your family, and that's ultimately what I try to do at SunPro.
If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. My dad would say that. My dad was a dentist, and he goes, if I had a chance to build, and he encouraged all of us not to become dentists, which is super interesting. And two of my brothers are dentists, and I have two brother-in-laws who are dentists. But I said, well, what would you have done, Dad, if you weren't a dentist? Because I would have been a truck driver or a PE teacher. And I said, it's easier for you to say that because you go to work every day and come home every day, but the truck driver is going to be gone, especially long haul for, maybe sometimes weeks at a time. And so the grass is greener on the other side was certainly applicable to that statement from him.
I wanted to ask about your kids because I think the thing my wife and I never were blessed. That's a long story there, but I just love that you have seemed to allow your children to ensure that they do something meaningful for themselves, but you give them the freedom to choose that. And I think that's just a really wonderful thing. You establish the values, and it shows in your business, it shows in your work, and I admire you for that. That's the only reason I don't normally push for those things, but I just remember that talk. I thought, man, I just love the way, whether it was the piano, whether it's tennis, it doesn't matter, right?
Rick, you nailed it. I mean, Suzanne and I actually coached the girls' tennis team where we lived in the last 7 years. And obviously, you're very much a coach, and I'm sure if you coach the team would be outstanding. But I tell the girls on the team, but also my girls, that what you learn in athletics, academics, whatever extracurricular, music, I said that's what by and large forms you as a person, because you're in the stage of life where you're very impressionable and can learn quickly and retain. And so, use it wisely and become the person you are. And so, my one daughter that played a lot of tennis has very much formed the person that she is. And I think will serve her well in the characteristics that she's acquired through usually the losses, not the wins. They're really, the devastating losses is where you learn who you are.
I think we call that grit.
Yeah. She's gritty, that's for sure.
I love it. Well, I'm glad you finally read the science. From one spiritual guy to another, a guy who didn't want to get in this business, but yet studied something at a school specializing in forestry, a guy that went to Siberia where the forests are abundant, a guy that went to work for Weyerhaeuser, but not in the lumber industry, finally realized God was saying something, and thank God you heard it, because I think you finally found the right place, and we're glad you did, my brother.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on the podcast, Rick. Great.
I think you found your calling. Well done. I sure hope you're enjoying the content that we deliver in these LBM Journal podcasts. If you're liking them, then you'll like more information you can get at my online learning platform, Building Leaders 24/7, the sales learning platform exclusively designed for the construction products industry. There, you will find content for every member of your organization, how to build a better customer experience, how to communicate better with your internal customers and teammates. You'll see courses on selling effectively to builders and architects and the various audiences of our industry. Ultimately, it is a website and a platform that helps you increase the profitability for your company. And if you are an executive or a manager for that company, you will have the ability to assign courses and track progress of your members. So for more information on the state-of-the-art sales learning platform for our industry today, visit buildingleaders.com or just email me, Rick Davis, at buildingleaders.com. We're here to help and drive you to fearless sales leadership.